Discover the amazing ways 100 brave souls thrived against the incredible cold of the Wild West. The frost kissed the grass as Clara McKinley knelt by the edge of the woods, her breath hanging in the air like a ghost of all those burdens she carried. Gathering firewood was not just a daily chore, it was an exercise in defiance against the darkness encroaching on her land. The cold nipped at her fingers, every splinter of wood a reminder of the strength she mustered to fend off both nature and men like Silas Franks. Memories of her husband lingered like echoes in the back of her mind, the weight of his absence pressing down as relentlessly as the chill that filled the air. Silas, with his land acquisition schemes, loomed large, a dark cloud threatening to swallow the sun shining on her modest home. Every day she woke up with the resolve to keep it, but fear twisted in her gut like a snake, coiling tighter with each passing moment. Could she stand against a man who had the power to destroy everything her family had fought for? The thought threatened to drown her, much like the icy waters of the nearby creek, chilling her to the bone. On the cold nights, Clara sought solace in the attic, rifling through memories tucked away in dusty corners. It was there she earned the journal, the very essence of her husband's thoughts laid bare. As she read his words, tales of ancestors who faced off against insurmountable odds, an ember flickered to life within her chest. They had battled through droughts, fought off claim jumpers, and never faltered under the weight of their struggles. Yet here she was, torn between the instinct to protect her children and the gnawing dread that she may have to give it all up to ensure their safety. Before we continue, I need to tell you about something important that's happening. YouTube has been making changes to the system, and many people are losing notifications from channels they follow. If you're enjoying the content, click the bell and mark all notifications so you don't miss the next videos. And if you can leave a like, it really helps with reach. Seriously, it makes a difference. Oh, tell me in the comments where you're watching from. I'm always curious to know who's on the other side of the screen. Now let's continue. The weight of her dilemma pressed against her heart, a constant ache that echoed her fears. How could she stand up to Silas when he had the town in his pocket? She needed the community's support, yet it felt perilously out of reach, like the sun breaking through heavy clouds only to retreat once more. With every glance toward her children, small bodies huddled around the fire, faces aglow with innocence, her resolve flickered. Could she risk everything for a remote chance at victory? Or was it better to surrender, to find a way to keep them safe under someone else's shadow? With a heart racing as quickly as her thoughts, Clara steeled herself. She knew she could not back down. The whispers of her husband echoed in her ears, igniting a determination so fierce that it turned her fear into fuel. Confronting Silas felt inevitable now. She just needed to find the right moment. And then came news of a clandestine meeting where Silas's plans would unfold like a dark tapestry, full of treachery and threat. As the evening chill seeped deeper into her bones, Clara gathered herself. Her future and that of her children lay tangled in the looming confrontation ahead. Would she step into the maw of danger, facing Silas head-on, or would she let fear anchor her to the ground? The choice clung to her skin, and as she stepped toward the town hall, Clara felt the weight of the world pressing down, dark clouds swirling in the distance, ready to unleash their storm. The courage within her ignited, yet uncertainty hung like a shadow, leaving her teetering between destiny and despair. As Clara approached the town hall, each step felt heavier than the last, the cold seeping into her bones like a thick fog. She could feel the stares of townsfolk as they passed by, their eyes murmuring doubts and judgments. But Clara pushed through, fueled by the hope she had drawn from her husband's words. Nothing could hold her back now. She had a plan. Inside the town hall, whispers of conspiracies filled the air, mingling with the scent of wood smoke and worn leather. Clara arrived just as Silas began addressing a small crowd of men, his voice smooth and persuasive, promising prosperity and urgency, but beneath his charm lay the sharp edge of manipulation. Repeating his rhetoric was a bit like wearing a well-tailored suit over a slaughterhouse apron. She could see his power exerting itself, sowing seeds of fear and dependency among the gathered men. Clara clutched the doorframe, the wood digging into her palm, grounding her. She was overwhelmed, yet determined. She had often felt invisible, yet now, in this moment, she was resolute. It was more than a chance to confront Silas. It was her opportunity to reclaim her narrative. The verdant memory of her husband's steadfast spirit glimmered in her mind and reignited her purpose. Drawing a deep breath, she took a step forward, her voice rising above the din. "Silas Franks, how can you stand here and deceive these men?" The words burst forth, unexpected, unplanned. A few heads turned, surprise etched across their faces. She stepped further into the room, unyielding and defiant. "We don't need your false promises to thrive. We need to look after one another and stand united against threats like you." A heavy silence enveloped the space as panic clawed at Clara's mind. She couldn't take back her words, but as she locked eyes with Silas, something shifted. His charming veneer cracked, revealing a glimmer of the rage beneath. The men, once enraptured by his promises, now looked between her and Silas, some squirming, others feigning indifference. Clara stood tall, heart pounding, pushing through the fear. This was her moment. There was no turning back. "You want to acquire our land? You want to trap us all under your thumb? My husband fought for what we have, and I will fight harder. We are not as easy to trample upon as you think." Her voice grew steadier, emboldened by the urgency of her truth. She could feel the tremors of doubt in the air, could sense the shifting allegiances as uncertainty seeped through Silas's confidence. Before Silas could respond, a rumble of support crept in from the back of the room, a reluctant trickle that built into murmurings of agreement among the men. As she spoke, Clara realized she was not just standing up for her land, but also igniting a shared consciousness that had lain dormant. Clara's heart surged as she felt the energy shift. She had found her strength, her voice. In the face of Silas's power, she was carving out her own space, fueled not just by desperation, but also by undeniable resolve. But as Silas narrowed his gaze, the threat in his eyes made it clear that her fight was far from over. "Clara McKinley," he sneered, an edge of menace in his voice, "you'll wish you had kept your mouth shut. I assure you, this isn't over." With that, a storm was brewing, and Clara stood at the eye of it, channeling every ounce of courage within her. She had ignited a spark, but now she needed to fan the flames. She needed to gather allies, to turn her fight into something bigger. Steeling herself, she vowed to take on Silas, not just for her land, but for every soul who dared to oppose tyranny. As she left the hall that evening, a new fire burned in her belly. The struggle ahead would test her resolve like never before, and Clara was prepared to rise to the challenge. The stakes had never been higher, but for the first time she felt the power of possibility coursing through her veins. Clara couldn't help but wonder, what sacrifices would she need to make to secure the future for her children? The taste of the battle lingered on her lips, and she could almost hear footsteps echoing in the distance, each one leading her closer to her reckoning with Silas. Clara took a deep breath as she stepped into the cold night air outside the town hall, her pulse racing with adrenaline. The echoes of her confrontation with Silas rang in her ears. As she walked through the empty streets, a myriad of thoughts raced through her mind. She had stoked the embers of resistance, but could she fan them into a full-blown flame? Gathering her courage was just the first step. She needed strategies, allies, and a way to navigate the treacherous waters ahead. In the flickering light of a nearby post, Clara took a seat on a weathered bench, her heart still pounding from the urgency of the moment. The whispers of the townsfolk had stung her, pushing her to question her own worth and capability. Could she truly lead them against Silas? She recalled the lingering gaze of the men who had leaned in, intrigued by her words, and it shifted something inside her. They were hungry for hope, for someone to show them the path, and perhaps that someone could be her. A chilling gust swept through the town, and Clara pulled her coat tighter around her. She had spent most of her life feeling like a shadow, confined to the role of supportive wife, obedient daughter. But now an intoxicating sense of purpose began to blossom within her. The challenge ahead was daunting, but she couldn't afford to shrink away from it any longer. Clara needed to gather intelligence. She decided her first target would be Edna Gardner, the town's unofficial historian and keeper of secrets. Edna had a wealth of knowledge about the town's past and connections scattered throughout the community. Clara hoped that Edna could help her identify which of the townsfolk might share her vision. She knew that to confront Silas effectively, she needed to understand the fears and motivations of both sides. As Clara approached Edna's modest home, she noticed the silhouette of Edna at the window, piecing together bits of a quilt. With a heart full of determination, Clara knocked softly on the door. The moment Edna recognized her, surprise mingled with curiosity painted her features. "Clara, what brings you here at this hour?" There was no mistaking the concern hidden behind her friendly tone. "Edna, I need your help," Clara replied, her voice steadying as she articulated her intentions. "I want to unite the townsfolk against Silas. He's manipulating them, and they don't even see it. I need to know who might be willing to stand with me." Edna studied her, the flickering candlelight casting shadows that danced across her aged face. "It's brave of you to want to confront him," she said slowly. "But challenging Silas isn't a small task. It can have repercussions that could tear this town apart. Are you prepared for that?" Clara felt the weight of Edna's words settle heavily on her shoulders. The sharp truth stung because she feared what the conflict could unleash. Yet she also grasped the gravity of the battle she had chosen. "I can't stand by and let him destroy what my family has fought for, what our fathers have built. I'm willing to risk a lot to protect this community." Edna's expression softened, and Clara could see her weighing the risks. "Very well, Clara, I'll help you. But remember, trust grows in small measures, and you'll need to tread carefully." As the two women began to plot their course, Clara felt a shift of confidence. She was not alone in this fight, and with Edna's guidance, she could navigate the tangled web of alliances and betrayals. Clara left Edna's home with a sense of purpose, the night no longer feeling quite so cold. Each step forward brought her closer to her vision, igniting her resolve anew. But as the shadows deepened around her, she sensed a danger lurking just beyond her sight. How far was she willing to go to protect what she loved? The murmurings of Silas's threats echoed ominously in her thoughts. A sobering question hung in the air. What would she sacrifice to secure not only her family's future, but the very fabric of their lives? The clock was ticking louder than ever. Time to recruit, strategize, and prepare for the storm on the horizon. Clara stood in front of her reflection in the small, cracked mirror hanging in her bedroom. She barely recognized the woman staring back at her. The timid girl who had always faded into the background was now on the precipice of a monumental transformation. With every decision she made, she felt layers of expectation and fear peel away, revealing a stronger version of herself. Yet doubt clung to her. How could she champion the hopes of others when her own life felt so fragile? The stakes were high. A misstep could lead to repercussions that could destroy not only her aspirations, but also the fragile thread of solidarity she was trying to weave. This was not merely a struggle against Silas, it was a fight for her very identity. Determined to forge ahead, Clara reached for the pen and notebook she had kept as an outlet for her thoughts. Writing had always been her refuge, a place to express what words often failed to convey aloud. Perhaps crafting a plan would help solidify her intentions and create a roadmap for her next steps. She penned down a list of people she believed might stand with her, names emerging as she recalled snippets of conversations, the ones who had voiced their discontent with Silas's leadership. Each name felt like a heartbeat, a sign of potential allies. Clara's thoughts flowed as she began outlining what she could offer to each of them. An invitation to rally, a chance to reclaim their narratives. As she focused on how to approach each individual, a familiar face floated to the surface, Jonas. He had been a childhood friend, yet their paths had diverged as adulthood sunk its claws into their aspirations. He was passionate about the land and had often spoken about Silas's unfair practices. Getting his support could be pivotal. Clara hesitated. Inviting Jonas wasn't just about his potential influence, it was also a reminder of her own turbulent past. Would he still see her as the small-town girl he once knew, or would she find judgment in his eyes? Would he ridicule her audacity? Her heart raced with a mix of anticipation and anxiety. She couldn't afford to let her insecurities dictate her course. "You have to be brave," she whispered to her reflection, the words emerging as a challenge, rather than reassurance. With renewed resolve, Clara set out to find Jonas. The sun had dipped below the horizon, casting long shadows across the dusty roads leading to the outskirts of town where he lived. Each step felt heavier as she approached his modest homestead, the weight of expectation resting heavily on her shoulders. She hesitated at his front gate, her thoughts a whirlwind as she replayed her plan. What would she say? How could she present her vision without sounding naive? The mix of desires and fears coiled within her, tightening like a noose as she contemplated her next move. Before she could second-guess herself, she knocked on the weathered door. The sound was sudden and sharp against the silence of the evening. It felt like a declaration. She was here, and there was no turning back. After a moment of hesitation, he opened the door, surprise reflecting in his brown eyes. "Clara, it's been a while." His voice was tentative, as if he were unsure how to engage after years of separation. Clara took a deep breath, bolstered by a sudden surge of courage. "Yes, it has. I need to talk to you about Silas and what's happening in the town. There's a lot at stake, and I believe we can make a difference." Jonas regarded her closely, processing her words with visible thoughtfulness. "You want to confront him?" The skepticism in his tone was palpable, yet layered with curiosity. A flicker of doubt dashed through Clara. This was a test. Would he dismiss her as foolish? "Yes," she answered, her voice faltering for just a moment before it steadied. "I want to rally those who've been affected by his decisions. There's a fire in the town that can't be ignored. I'm willing to lead, but I need your help." The doorframe seemed to close in on them, the shadows deepening as the air thickened with unspoken questions and fears. For the first time, Clara noticed the weight of his silence, the very sign that could define their paths moving forward. Would Jonas see her strength, or only the girl she used to be? As each second stretched, Clara fought the urge to fill the silence. The space between them felt monumental, the unyielding reality of their choices breathing life into the moment. This was the beginning, and she was at the edge of a precipice. What awaited her on the other side needed her to leap, for herself, for Jonas, and for the men and women standing in the crosshairs of Silas's greed. Yet, what if she was wrong? What if her vision for change set a cascade of events into motion that none of them could control? "Clara," he finally said, his tone shifting as he stepped back into the shadows of his home. "Come in." An invitation, an opportunity. But how far could she really push for change? Each question echoed like an unending chant, resonating within her as she crossed the threshold into uncertainty. The moment Clara stepped inside, the dim light flickered around her, illuminating the scattered remnants of Jonas's life. Old photographs, farming equipment, and a vast map of the land they both grew up on. But it was the way he stood to the side, watching her with an intensity that sent shivers down her spine, that anchored her in reality. "Why now?" Jonas asked, breaking the silence once more. The openness in his eyes was offset by the hardness of his question. "What makes you think you can take on Silas?" His words sent a surge of frustration through her. Clara, acutely aware of the stakes, leaned against the wooden railing leading to his living room. "Because if not now, then when? If we don't do something, it'll just keep getting worse. Silas doesn't care about the people in this town. He cares about his profits." Jonas stepped closer, enthusiasm battling with skepticism. "You seem different, more determined. But what do you really know about leading something like this?" In that instant, Clara's heart twisted. Her mind danced with memories of a quieter girl who would seize opportunities to blend into the background, who would shy away from confrontation. Yet here she stood, pushing back against doubt. "I have been afraid for too long, watching everyone accept Silas's decisions like they're inevitable. I want to change that. I may not have experience, but I have a vision." Jonas studied her, his gaze softening. "And what does this vision look like?" It was a question she had rehearsed but never thought she'd face. Clara took a deep breath, channeling her internal turmoil into words. "I imagine a town where we control our own future, where we can negotiate better terms instead of living under Silas's thumb. If we join our voices, we could build something stronger." Jonas stepped closer, a flicker of recognition passing over his features. "A lot of people are scared, Clara. They know Silas can be ruthless." "Then let me face that fear for all of us," she insisted, each word gaining momentum. "I have to take the first step. I know it's a risk, but isn't it riskier to remain stagnant?" An uneasy silence enveloped them, yet Clara felt the surge of hope spiraling within. She had spoken those words not merely as a strategy, but as a culling of her own struggles. Would he see that strength and decide to join her? "All right," Jonas finally said, breaking into a faint smile. "I can help you, but you need to be prepared. There are some who might not be pleased to hear from you, even me." "Who?" Clara's pulse quickened, an awareness settling on the scope of their task. "Who are we up against?" "A few of our old friends have sided with Silas, either by choice or by fear. They're influential in town, and they won't just step aside because we ask them to," he replied, his expression serious. Clara felt the weight of his words settle heavily, grounding her. Determination further into reality. This was no longer just a conflict with Silas. It was an internal battle within the community, one that spanned her past relationships and tested her resolve. "I'll need to organize some way to approach them. We can't just walk in unprepared," she said, her mind racing to form a game plan. A thoughtful look crossed Jonas's face as he paced the floor. "We'll need clear evidence against Silas so the public sees his misdeeds for what they really are. If people can connect with a reason to fight back, they might reconsider their loyalty. Clara felt invigorated by this newfound direction. Her purpose was solidifying. Yet, as adrenaline pumped through her veins, another thought pricked at her consciousness. Was she equipped to uncover those truths? Surely it would unveil not just Silas's plans, but her own weaknesses too. Jonas halted abruptly, eyeing her. "It will take more than just words, Clara. You're ready to expose the truth, but can you handle the backlash that might follow?" A fleeting doubt suffocated her fiery resolve. Clara's fingers brushed over the notebook she had left in her bag, a symbol of her plans. What if this mission unraveled everything she believed about herself? "Yes," she finally replied, the conviction returning. "I have to, for my own sake and everyone else's." "Let's do this together," Jonas said, extending a hand, a commit of partnership rather than mere camaraderie. The gesture felt monumental, more than an alliance. It signified a shared ownership of fate and the courage to deconstruct an oppressive system. Just as she reached out to grasp his hand, the front door swung open, startling them both. A gust of cold air rushed in. A stranger silhouette, momentarily framed against the doorway, startled Clara, sending an unexpected jolt of anxiety through her. "Who's there?" Jonas called, tension threading through the room. Clara held her breath, heart lurching. The presence felt ominous, a sign of the old loyalties that could either shatter or strengthen her endeavor. What awaited her beyond this threshold was murky, an uncharted course teeming with danger. In that instant, Clara couldn't help but wonder if courage truly was the precursor to strength, or merely a facade against the encroaching storm. Clara's pulse raced as the shape in the doorway solidified into the figure of a woman, weary and wrapped in a heavy coat. She stepped inside, shaking off the chill as her dark hair fell loosely down her back. Clara's mind whirled with possibilities, each one more daunting than the last. "Sorry for barging in," the woman said, a hint of uncertainty in her voice. "I didn't mean to interrupt." Clara and Jonas exchanged glances, and Clara instinctively took a step forward. "Who are you?" The woman lifted her chin, meeting Clara's gaze with guarded interest. "I'm Mara. I've lived here longer than I can remember. I heard some noise and thought I should check on you." Jonas's posture relaxed slightly, but Clara remained tense, recognizing the unspoken reality of their mission ahead. They needed allies, and this stranger might hold insights into the landscape of their town. "We're planning to confront Silas," Clara stated boldly, deciding to test the waters. "Do you know anything about him? Any connections in town?" Mara's demeanor shifted. A storm of thoughts flickered behind her eyes. "You're not the first to challenge him. Many have tried and failed," she replied, her voice carrying the weight of experience. "But if you're serious, I can give you information, not just about Silas, but about those who support him. Some of them were once my friends." Clara felt invigorated, the pragmatics of their quest crystallizing in her mind. Discussions like these were needed, and she would learn what she could from Mara's cautious perspective. "Then we need to talk, but let's make sure we're safe." "A wise thought," Mara replied, glancing towards the door as though it might swing open again. "Silas has ears everywhere." As they settled around Jonas's old kitchen table, Clara seized the opportunity to dig deeper. "What do you suggest we do next? We've started gathering evidence, but we need a solid strategy." Mara leaned back, measuring her words carefully. "From what I've seen, Silas operates on fear. Those who follow him do so out of loyalty, fear, or some mix of both. If you challenge them, you'll need a compelling reason for them to turn away from him." Clara's heart sank slightly as new doubts began to creep in. Could she effectively produce that compelling reason? What if she failed to muster enough evidence? What if they won't listen no matter what we show them? Then you show them something they cannot ignore, Mara replied, her voice steady. Fear can be twisted into hope. You need to ignite their dissatisfaction. Remind them of why they are unhappy. That's your angle. Clara felt a spark of realization ignite within her. It wasn't enough to simply present data. She needed to weave a narrative that resonated emotionally. People didn't merely want facts. They craved a story they could latch onto. Gathering her resolve, Clara pressed further. If you're willing to help us, we can devise a plan together. I have contacts in town who might support this initiative, but I need to solidify our strategy first. You'll need to be cautious, Clara. There are consequences for stirring dissent, Mara warned, her face serious. You might find out more than you anticipated. There are hidden truths that could come crashing down the moment you begin digging. The gravity of Mara's words struck Clara, heavy like an anvil. Instantly, her thoughts spiraled back to her tentative past. She had often preferred the comfort of safety over diving into chaos. The doubt stirred, emerging like a specter. Could she cope with the potential backlash? The possibility of unearthing her own vulnerabilities was a looming threat, but the determination she felt had already transformed into something greater. Mara took her silence as deliberation. It's time to decide. Some will stand behind you, others will stab your back. Are you ready for the responsibility of this journey? You may have to face allies turned enemies. With her mind racing, Clara understood that personal growth would not come without sacrifice. I have to be ready, she insisted, resolving to transform anxiety into fortitude. For me, for them, I'm ready to rise. A slight smile broke through Mara's stern guise. It appears you've made up your mind, but it's a long road ahead. As they plotted their next steps, Clara's thoughts spun with excitement. Facing down the internal and external adversaries would require more than mere courage. She would need an unwavering resolve. Something within her sensed now was the moment for her to break free from the shackles of her past self. Just as the air grew heavy with anticipation, the distant echo of a car engine broke the silence of the night, growing nearer. Clara's heart mirrored the sound, a pounding reminder that challenges were imminent. Who could that be? With newfound determination churning in her stomach, she braced for the dawning reckoning, wondering just how far she would need to go to truly become the leader she envisioned. Little did she know, each step forward would lead her further into her latent strength. The next chapter loomed, tinged with the inescapable question. Would she have the courage to face the darkness waiting at her doorstep? Clara held her breath as the car's headlights pierced through the dim room, illuminating shadows that danced along the walls. A sense of urgency gripped her, urging her to act. Who could it be? The potential for allies or adversaries hung like a blade above them, ready to drop at any moment. "Stay quiet," she whispered to Jonas and Mara. She edged toward the window, pulling the curtain aside just enough to catch a glimpse. Swallowed by a mix of apprehension and curiosity, her heart pounded against her chest, echoing her anxieties. "I see someone," she murmured, straining to identify the figures approaching the door. The silhouettes grew more defined as they stepped from the vehicle. Clara's mind raced through a mental roster of possible acquaintances and enemies. Were they coming to add fuel to her fire, or were the flames of conflict already licking at her heels? Mara, now beside her, peered out as well. "They're familiar," she said, a hint of wariness in her tone. "Let's hope they come with good intentions." The door creaked open, and Clara felt a shiver of uncertainty. Trust had never been easy for her, and the stakes had escalated to heights she had never envisioned. As two faces stepped inside, recognition washed over her. It was Eli and Lila, friends from her past, who had also felt the tremors of Silas's tightening grip on their town. "Clara!" Lila exclaimed, her expression a mix of surprise and relief. "We were worried about you. We heard the rumors." "And came to see if you're really going to challenge him?" Eli added, his expression shifting from concern to determination. The burst of familiarity washed over Clara like a warm tide, briefly pushing back her tension. "Yes, we are," she said, the conviction in her voice steadying her nerves. "But I need to know if you're willing to stand with me. Fear for our safety has kept us silent long enough." "No more," Lila declared, the fire in her spirit igniting something deep within Clara. "I'm tired of Silas's hold over us. We stand together, right?" Clara could feel her own resolve deepen as energy sparked around the group. Conversations shifted into planning, and she found herself at the center. It was exhilarating but terrifying. Had she truly inherited the mantle of leadership, or was this merely a momentary illusion under pressure? With each strategy they sketched out on the table, Clara navigated through uncertainty and hesitation. She discovered something fundamental about herself. She was no longer looking to others for direction. She was determining the course of their path. "Gather anyone willing to stand against Silas," she instructed, the words feeling almost foreign yet empowering. "We need to organize an understanding of his supporters and unearth their weaknesses. We'll show the town that they have been blinded by fear." Eli nodded, his confidence bolstering her own. "I know people who have ties to the mayor's office. If we can get dirt on Silas, we might expose him for the fraud he is." As the plan took shape, Clara felt the weight of responsibility shift slightly from her shoulders. She wasn't merely an individual attempting to rid herself of a manipulative figure. She was the spark that would ignite a larger flame. Yet, as the excitement flickered in her chest, a hushed voice of doubt lingered in the corners of her mind. Was she truly fit for this role? Clara grappled with the fear of not only disappointing herself, but potentially leading others into a dangerous confrontation. But as she began to map out actionable steps, a hidden strength blossomed, a desire not just to lead, but to empower others to reclaim their voices. As their meeting progressed, Clara shared ideas about setting up a network of whispers, creating layers of information that would serve as both shield and sword. Each proposal ignited a flicker of hope, revealing the outstanding ability within her to rally support. However, just as the vision began to sharpen, a sudden thought crashed against her optimism. Could she trust her history with these friends? Would they remain loyal when things turned shadowy? A chilling realization swept over her as she realized that trust could be a double-edged sword. As she caught Eli and Lila exchanging glances filled with a multitude of unspoken words, she felt that each connection could either support her journey or take her deeper into unseen treachery. Determined to approach this new path with transparency, Clara decided to voice her fears. This isn't just about confronting Silas. Are we all in this together? Matter what happens? Mara glanced between them, her newfound friend seeming strong yet fragile in this critical moment. The heat of commitment seemed to teeter precariously, as if a gust could send everything spiraling into chaos. As the evening darkened around them, Clara prepared for the impending risks that lay ahead. With a fire ignited not just in her spirit, but in the hearts of her companions, they stood poised on the brink of some critical decisions. Each soul in the room teetered between empowerment and overwhelming doubt. The question loomed large. Would their trust in one another endure when faced with true adversity? Just then, a loud bang reverberated from outside, a harsh reminder of the storm brewing. Without doubt, Clara knew that the dreadful dawn was not far away. Would she be the one to lead them through, or would her shaky foundation betray her when it mattered most? Clara's mind raced as the echoes of the bang subsided, leaving an unsettling silence that pressed heavily against them. The air felt stifling, charged with tension. The anticipation of impending confrontation pulsed in her veins. She turned to Eli and Leela, their faces etched with determination, yet shadowed by uncertainty. "Let's keep our voices low," Clara directed, her tone firm but gentle as fear grazed the edges of her command. "The last thing we need is to draw attention to ourselves before we are ready." They shifted close around the table, narrowing their focus. Clara took a steadying breath, her new role as leader sending ripples of anxiety through her core. The doubt that had resided in her earlier suddenly roared back to life. Was she equipped to rally these friends into a cohesive front against Silas? What if her hesitation led to dire consequences? "Let's start mapping out Silas's connections," Clara suggested, dismissing her doubts as she fought against them. "Eli, you mentioned the mayor's office. Who can you reach out to, and how do we verify what they know?" Eli leaned forward, enthusiasm igniting as he began sketching a diagram on a scrap piece of paper. "I could talk to Heather. She's inside her staff. She might know about Silas's backers. And if we can tap into public records, that could give us a background on his recent deals." Clara watched him, an inexplicable sense of admiration building within her. His commitment rewired her trepidations into purpose. In this moment, she wasn't merely a concerned citizen. They were partners, grappling with the shadow that threatened their lives. Leela interjected, "What about the people in the community? They need to hear that they're not alone. Perhaps we can put out feelers discreetly?" The momentum surged, kindling an atmosphere steered by collaboration. Clara articulated plans and captured details, conscious of the impact her words wielded. For the first time, she embraced her authority, deftly maneuvering the group through complex considerations and objections. Yet, self-doubt lingered like a specter, gnawing at her spirit. Could she really craft a message strong enough to unite them against Silas's grip? The notion of failure tugged at her resolve, leaving her yearning for affirmation. "Leela, how can we ensure you remain safe while you scout around?" Clara asked, redirecting her concerns towards practical solutions. The act of making plans dispelled some of her internal turmoil, reminding her that actions could yield clarity. "Don't worry about me," Leela reassured, but Clara saw the flicker of worry reflected in her eyes. It intensified her fear, a fear that those she cared for would be compromised by the risks they were about to take. As they dedicated themselves to the plotting, Clara resolved to fortify their alliance, questioning the fabric of trust interwoven in their relationships. "We need to promise each other full transparency. Secrets could unravel everything we're building together." Eli nodded emphatically, and Leela followed suit, her expression softened but sober. Clara felt a flicker of hope igniting against the shadows. The thrill of leadership baked into her bones, compelled her to anchor their commitment with a touch of vulnerability. The group continued brainstorming until late into the evening. They shared stories, ideas, and fears, modulating between peals of laughter and solemn assurances, their bond strengthening with each exchange. Clara trapped herself in this newfound excitement. For the first time, she glimpsed a leader forming within. However, as they wrapped up the discussion, Clara's heart sank as reality dug deeper into her thoughts. The daylight was fading fast, and each moment brought them closer to confrontation, to acts that would demand not just courage, but integrity. In the stillness, she pondered, was she ready to hold others' destinies in her hands? If she faltered, the repercussions could ripple far beyond herself. The crackling silence of their discussions was interrupted by the distant voice of a protest. Fierce and determined, yet painted with the uncertainty of the very people she sought to empower. Clara felt her heart quicken. Could they transform vague sentiments into cohesive action? Or would inertia drown the spark? Her determination hardened into a steely resolve. Clara bolstered her inner voice, recognizing that true leadership flourished with vulnerability, admitting uncertainty while forging ahead regardless. She stood taller, swept away by the conviction that their fight had begun, yet aware of how precarious it all truly felt. In that moment, she caught sight of flickers through a window, a shadowy silhouette approaching, making the hair on her neck stand. Was it friend or foe? The boundary between ally and adversary blurred, realities threatening to collide. Her breath caught in her throat. "Do you hear that?" she whispered to her friends, fear coursing through her voice. Next came the excruciating choice. Would she face the threat head-on, illuminating shadows that could crumble her newfound confidence? Or would she retreat into doubt, risking everything she had begun to build? Clara's heart raced as the silhouette grew clearer, inching closer against the dim light of the room. She felt the weight of her friends' gazes, each look steeped in unspoken queries and shared apprehensions. It wasn't just her courage at stake, it was theirs too. Leadership had morphed into a heavy mantle, each moment necessitating decisions that could alter their fates. "Stay quiet," she mouthed, urgency shadowing her calm demeanor. Clara willed herself to project steadiness as she reached for the chair, positioning it beside the door to brace for whatever may come. The figure halted just outside, the faint sound of footsteps halting. Clara strained to hear, to make sense of the encroaching presence. Did they come as a threat or a possible partner in rebellion? Inner turmoil swirled. This was the moment she could shatter the silence with a question or brace for confrontation. "Clara, what do we do?" Eli whispered, eyes wide. His fear mirrored her own. Yet, as she locked into his gaze, she saw the flicker of expectation propelling her. "Wait for it," she murmured. The moment stretched, a taut string ready to snap. Finally, the door creaked open, revealing a cloaked figure. Their familiarity cut through Clara's tension. "I've been looking for you," a voice emerged, laced with urgency. It was Miles, an old acquaintance whose connections often wove deeper than city politics. He bore news. "How much do you know about Silas?" Clara demanded, her voice betraying the edge of her anxiety. She shuffled forward, driven by the need for clarity as Leela and Eli flanked her, cautiously observing. Miles stepped in, pushing back the hood of his cloak, his features tight with a grim understanding. "Enough to know he's lined up support from some serious players. His influence runs deeper than anyone realizes." Clara's pulse quickened as Miles continued detailing what it meant. Lives torn apart, truths buried beneath layers of deceit. Each spoke in this growing web reached into her identity, rippling through her sense of purpose. She saw the people she wanted to protect, their faces awaiting courage from those supposed to lead. Eli and Leela leaned closer, their expressions switching between concern and anger. Clara embraced this charge, each word igniting her resolve. "What's the plan, then?" she asked, fervently. It was no longer a matter of whether or not she could lead. Now she needed to strategize. Miles took a deep breath, glancing around. "We need to gather intel from various sources. Silas's empire is built on fear, and if we can expose his weaknesses, we stand a chance. But you need to be ready for what's to come." His words echoed Clara's earlier uncertainty. Questions clawed at her. Did she truly possess the fortitude to unveil the layers of Silas's facade? To push back against the entrenched power stirring just beneath the surface? With each challenge Miles came forth with, Clara's heart hammered against the reality that leadership was less about knowing every answer. It was about leading with conviction, even in the throes of doubt. "Tell us what to do," she urged, conviction wrapping around her words. The grit in her voice carved a newfound space for courage. She felt the faint stirrings of grit emerging from within. "Infiltrate, blend in," Miles said, tracing the outline of a plan with urgency. "We need to access city records and tap into every lead that can link Silas's operations. They won't suspect you three. It's risky, but it's our best shot." Chills crossed Clara's spine, realizing the depth of the commitment unfolding before her. This was no longer merely a fight. It was a crucible demanding every ounce of her evolving strength. Could she navigate the shadows, shield her friends, and lead them unabated by fear? Visualizing their resilience, she resolved to harness her vulnerability and shape it into unwavering leadership. As they began mapping routes and making contacts, Clara felt an unfamiliar fire kindling within her, the thrill of rising to the occasion. Their collective strength began to sketch outlines of a plan that surged beyond her own limitations. But amidst the flurry of ideas, a nagging fear lingered. Would they manage to reveal the truth before the truth found them first? The door had been opened, and with it came possibilities and threats, intertwining until she couldn't differentiate between the two. Just as Clara was about to finalize their plan, a tremor of realization jolted through her. Silas was already digging for dirt in the city, hunting for potential betrayals, ready to strike preemptively against perceived threats. Time was slipping through their fingers like water. "Listen closely," Clara declared, gathering her friends, urgency echoing within. "We need everything ready by dawn. This is about more than just us now." Suspicion swirled in the air, shadows of silenced threats brushing against their resolve. Her spirit, ignited by doubt, yet fortified by purpose, propelled her forward. The next move held consequences far beyond her immediate grasp, and their footsteps would reverberate into the fabric of their community. Would they illuminate Silas's darkness or fall prey to the very fear that haunted them? The moment loomed, tinted with an undeniable tension. As the line between risk and revelation blurred, Clara braced herself for the path ahead and the truth yet to be uncovered. As dawn broke over the horizon, painting the sky in hues of gold and orange, Clara stood in front of her modest home, the chill of the morning air biting at her cheeks. Yet a fire flickered within her, igniting a sense of purpose that surged through her entire being. She had spent too long in the shadows, and today marked a transformation, a reclamation of her voice, her strength, and her family's legacy. Clara gathered her resolve, recalling every journey that had led her here, the memories of her husband's words, the moments of doubt, the alliances forged in the dark. They had amassed a small but determined coalition, and fear no longer held dominion over her heart. Today was not merely a confrontation. It was a call to action, a declaration that had been a long time coming. As she made her way to the town square, her thoughts remained sharp and focused. Each step was a silent promise to her children, to the town, and to herself. She needed to confront Silas, but more importantly, she needed to guide others to see through his manipulations. With every corner she turned, she envisioned the unity that awaited her. The shared glances and hushed conversations of townsfolk who had felt powerless mirrored her own experiences, transforming her apprehension into an exhilarating resolve. Reaching the square, she took note of the gathered crowd, whispers dancing through the air as anticipation hung palpably. Clara stood taller, scanning the sea of faces, some familiar, some marked by fear, and others filled with indignation at Silas's grip. They were waiting for someone to affirm their beliefs, their anger, and their need for justice. "Everyone has a story," Clara began, her voice echoing against the buildings that had long tarred her presence. As she spoke, Clara saw nods of acknowledgment ripple through the assembly, bolstering her confidence. "We've been silent for too long, held captive by the fear of a man who thrives on division." Her words flowed with passionate conviction, and a determined light sparkled in her eyes. Clara shared her experiences, the struggle to fight for her family's legacy, the realization that they were not alone. As she unfolded the tales of loss, desperation, and accumulated strength, her story intertwined with theirs, creating a tapestry of resilience that connected hearts. "We possess the power to write our own narrative," she declared, her voice rising. "We need to unite, to stand together against Silas and fight for the future of our families, our land, and our dignity." In that moment, she felt a shift in the air. Clara sensed the collective will of her community awakening, a spirit that was both fierce and nurturing. They were tired of being pawns in someone else's game. Fueled by that realization, she saw faces transform, not just her allies, but those who had once doubted her strength. As murmurs of agreement surged, Clara's confidence solidified like steel within her. The fire inside them was now palpable. It sparked a shift. She reached toward those who had once been hesitant and offered her arm in solidarity. "Join me. Let's take our stand. Together." But as the crowd began to gather strength, Clara noticed the easy smirk of Silas emerging from the back, flanked by men ready to quash any dissent. Their presence cast a shadow over the burgeoning light of unity. "You think your cries of rebellion will amount to anything?" Silas laughed, his derision striking a chord of fear. "You really think you can challenge me?" Clara fought against the urge to shrink back. Instead, she stepped forward, summoning the power of her allies. "We challenge you not as individuals, but as a community that refuses to be ruled by fear." Their voices rose, empowered by her defiance. She felt the threads of connection tighten among them. Silas's frown deepened, and Clara saw his facade crack against the wave of solidarity that surged like thunder. "Enough of his empty threats," Clara bellowed. "Beneath all his bravado, he fears this!" She gestured collectively to the people surrounding her. "Our unity!" In that instant she felt a whirl of recognition from the townsfolk, embracing their shared strength. The tide had turned, and Clara experienced a profound sense of satisfaction as clarity washed over her. It wasn't just about land or wealth, it was about their collective spirit rising together against oppression. Their voices merged into a chorus of strength and affirmation. Clara realized she had not just challenged Silas's authority, she had ignited a movement, a reclamation of agency that galvanized others in ways she had only begun to grasp. Striding forward, Clara recounted the stories of Silas's deceit, detailing the detrimental impacts of his actions, naming the neglect he had imposed on their homes. The evidence they had painstakingly gathered began to unravel as the crowd stood resolute, no longer defined by fear, but animated by hope. "Silas Franks, you may have thought you could silence us, but today we stand unyielding. United, we shall not be moved." A wave of applause erupted as allies found their resolve. Clara felt herself being carried by the surge, the collective energy pulsating like a heartbeat. She had defined herself in ways that she'd always dreamed. Her fight had become theirs, and the moment shimmered with the promise of true transformation. Before Silas could regain his footing or retort, 2 town council members stepped forward, emboldened by Clara's overwhelming strength. standing behind her as a show of unity. "We're with you!" echoed around her, each sentiment fortified by myriad voices. Clara experienced a rush of exhilaration, realizing the triumph of leadership lay not in individual glory, but in galvanizing the strength found in community. Her journey had transcended personal milestones. She had fostered an empowerment that inspired others to claim their own narratives. In the days that followed, Clara continued to forge alliances within the town, each step emboldened by the recognition that she was now not just a survivor, but a leader. Silas felt the ramifications of their newfound strength. His actions became scrutinized, his power diluted as more began to see through his manipulative ways. Clara stood with her allies, witnessing an organic transformation sweeping not just among her friends, but within the town itself. Conversations flourished in coffee shops, gardens, and market stalls, igniting discussions on safety and equity around their homes. Bit by bit, the community she loved began to reclaim its voice, a voice that had at one point seemed so out of reach. As long as we stand united, we can face whatever storms come our way, Clara realized, pride swelling as she engaged in strategic conversations shaping the blueprint of a brighter future. Through courage and resilience, Clara had evolved beyond merely reclaiming a territory. She had established her place, a recognized leader who encouraged true camaraderie and justice. She had transformed the way the town saw itself and stepped boldly into a narrative. Voices mattered. "I have finally found my voice," she affirmed to herself as she gazed at the horizon, where budding hope shadowed bygone fears. She had conquered her doubts and emerged not diminished, but richer for the challenge. As the sun dipped beneath the rolling hills, Clara felt satisfaction settle in her heart. Her journey, a journey of defiance, solidarity, and reclamation, would continue. But the foundation had been laid. Clara McKinley was no longer just a mother or widow, the fierce champion of her town. This was her legacy, and as the shadows of the past receded, they were replaced by the radiant dawn of a new era, one crafted with intention, strength, and unity in heart. Subscribe immediately to the channel to not miss the next exclusive emotional stories. Leave a like now to feed the algorithm. It really makes a difference. Comment your reactions and theories about the ending. Share instantly this video with at least 5 friends who need to see this conclusion. You need to subscribe now. This is the moment to show your support. Don't wait even one more second to share. Only true fans of personal overcoming stories understand the importance of supporting the channel through these actions.